I went to my sister's house. I see my nieces all the time. I have twin nieces. When I walked in, one of them, she hugged me. The other niece, she looked at me. Mind you, I had dropped a lot of weight, but one of my nieces, she looked at me and I thought she said, "How are you?" So I said, "I'm good, baby. How are you?" And she said, "No, who are you?" And I said, "I'm Auntie Jazzy." And she said, "Oh, hi, Auntie Jazzy." I never would have thought that what I was going through could affect them or that they would even notice. So it just took me by surprise. Hi, my name is Jaslynn Gholson, and this is how I survived domestic violence. So my ex-fiance was 5 years older than me. The way that I met him was through my sister and her now husband. That was his best friend. Our relationship, it started off pretty good. It just kind of dwindled down over the years. I wasn't happy with him anymore. I used to sit in the car and just cry before I would even walk into the house. I had tried to leave him before previous years, and he went crazy and he started throwing things and everything like that, and it made me really uncomfortable. We got engaged and everything just went downhill. And I ended up canceling our wedding and I left him. Originally, like, we had an apartment together. I told him that he could keep the apartment and I would just move out and get my own place. And I didn't have a problem with starting over. I just knew I didn't want to be with him anymore. And that was the end of it. When he kept the apartment, he ended up sending me a message saying that he didn't want to keep the apartment anymore. And I knew as soon as he sent me that message, there was an issue. And I assumed he had done something petty, like, maybe left the water on. But I came back to the apartment and everything was gone. The bed, the couch, the TV, literally everything was gone. At this point, obviously, I need to make some money so that I can get back on my feet. At the time, I had a lot of different business coming in. So, I do cakes, pies, cookies, everything like that. Sometimes people would pick up and sometimes I would deliver. Well, a while back, I had met what ended up being a friend on one of my delivers. He was really the first person I've ever opened up to. I later ended up talking to him after I had broken off my engagement. He had always been a good friend, so he offered to move in. And he was working two jobs at the time. So, him working, me working, we could work this out, whatever. When he had moved in, eventually it ended up being a relationship. I was really starting to open up even more. Like, a lot of times the talks that we would have, I didn't really know at the time how to say what I needed to say. So I would write it as a poem and I would give it to him. I wrote him a poem and it was called Everyone But You. And it says things like, "Who did this to you? By this, what do you mean? The way I cry at night, the pain you hear in your screams? Who did this to you? You are beautiful. And I'm not just talking about the inside of you. The outside you don't see. So when I call you beautiful, you don't look at me." I started to realize that there was something off about him. There was something different about him. And it made me very uncomfortable. So I talked to one of my friends about it. And she was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure he's fine. What probably it is that you have just gotten out of a relationship recently, and you're nervous that he's going to turn out the same way that your ex was." And I was like, "Okay, that's valid." I still kept having that feeling, so I was like, "Well, let me get him around some people," because nobody really knew that I was in a relationship. Nobody knew that I was living with a man. My cousin had came into town And I felt like this was the perfect opportunity because my cousin was a police officer. So I was like, if anything happens, good to go. And I can talk to him about it. We end up going to my uncle's house so we can all get together. It was my uncle, my sister, my mom, and then my cousin. My cousin comes in. He hasn't seen me for a while. He's looking at the tattoos on my arm. He's like, okay, I see you, cuz, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm looking at my boyfriend and he's eyeballing him. And I'm like, why is he looking at him like this? I'm like, okay. And we didn't even eat. Like, after we prayed over the food, we just left because I was about to break up with him as soon as we got in the car. Like, we're not about to do this at all. He's like storming off. He gets into the car and he was like, B, you got some balls. And nobody's ever talked to me like that. So for one, I didn't understand where it came from. And two, I was really in shock. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you gonna let him grab your butt right in front of me? Once again, this did not happen. I hugged my literally blood cousin. This is not a thing that happened. He was like, take me back to the house, let me grab my stuff, and I don't ever want to see you again. And I was like, okay, I don't ever want to see you again either. Like, what are you talking about? He starts grabbing the steering wheel and swerving me on the interstate. He started smoking a cigarette and he starts putting the cigarette out on me. We got back to the house and he starts packing his stuff. He gets mad at me because I start helping him pack his stuff. And he was like, if the police come in here, I'm killing you and then I'm killing me. And I ended up getting away from him and running away. When he caught up with me, he hit me in my eye, he hit me in my nose. I ended up running away again and he snatched me back into the house and he raped me. The next morning, I woke up, and when I woke up, I obviously tried to call the police and tried to get away from him. And he was like, I know where your uncle stays. He also talked about raping my sister. Not only did I get myself into a situation, I got my family into a situation, trying to protect them and trying to figure out how I was going to stop being afraid of him. I stayed until I could stop being afraid. If we fought the night before, I couldn't go to work because nobody could see that I was traumatized, I was bruised, or anything else. There was actually one time my eye was swollen shut. He pried it open and he had to keep doing it repeatedly so that it would stay open. And he sent me to work and had me tell them that I had pink eye because my eye was bloodshot red. My mom even showed up to my house to give me medicine for pink eye. All of my phone calls had to be answered on speakerphone. If I had clientele, he was always in my messages and he thought I was doing something with my clients. This man quit both of his jobs so that he could stalk me full time. The night that I realized that I wasn't afraid of him anymore, I was at his grandma's house. His cousin comes in and he says hi to everybody. When he says hi to me, he gets mad and he thinks that I looked at him when I didn't, but whatever. And he was like, oh, you're effing him, Jazz. So he gets upset. At this point, he has my gun that he obviously took from me. He gets all upset and we ended up getting kicked out of his grandma's house because he was going off and cussing and just really doing too much. So once we got kicked out, he was talking about shooting his cousin's tires out. And he's like, I'm gonna make sure he can't see you and blah, blah, blah. He points the gun at me and he said, I should kill you. I'm driving on the interstate. I said, do it. And he said, what? You think I won't? And I said, pull the trigger. So he puts the gun to my head while I'm driving on the interstate and says, I should kill you. And I said, pull it, pull it, pull it. And I just went crazy. It scared him. He put the gun down. He stopped talking for the rest of the car ride. That was when I realized that I could scare him. I knew that I was going to get away. And the only way that I thought to get away was to get to work at Marsh to be able to call the police. We went to a party, and I just knew I needed to make it through the night without fighting with him. If we fought the night before, I cannot go to work the next day. And when we went out to the party, I didn't even want to enjoy the party or try to enjoy the party. I went into a room by myself with my legs crossed, and I was playing with a Rubik's Cube. When I was in there, people kept walking past, and they were looking at me and they were like, "Why aren't you in here enjoying the party?" So then my boyfriend comes in there, and he was like, "Why are you in here being weird?" He's like, why you in here being weird playing with a Rubik's Cube? I'm good. Like, y'all can go have fun and, do whatever you need to do. He was like, no, come out and enjoy the party. You're gonna be fine. I'm not gonna do anything. They had a bartender there. He asked me what type of drink I wanted, and I said, surprise me. He was like, oh, you know him, Jazz? So he ends up fighting me in front of the entire party. Everybody had to pull him off of me, and we ended up getting kicked out the party. At this point, I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to work the next morning. I prayed. Usually my alarm goes off at 7:30. At 7:27, a little black bird came and sang next to my window, and it woke me up. He was still asleep. He was still passed out. I got my stuff and I went to work. When I went to work, I was able to call the police. He calls for backup. Backup arrives, and he was like, he has a history of violence. He should be in jail for about 30 days, and that gives you time to figure out your next move. After I had put him in jail, I think that he was just scared to go back to jail, and that was the last time that I had ever seen him.